So, it's been quite a while since I've actually talked about Wayfinder. It's a game that has had one hell of a rough start with the queue issues, the stabilization issues, and the performance issues, and just so many different issues. The game has a lot of issues. Thankfully, the developer is slowly but surely working towards them. I think there was recently a content injection with a couple of new weapons and whatnot. I've not tried it out myself. There's also been the experience buff, which is like 300 plus, which is a big improvement because the leveling was very slow. And at a certain point in the game, when you have so many weapons to pick and choose from and characters, you can't be having such slow progression. And until we get those scrolls actually added in as usable, you know, the only other option is to just grind out the game, which is not great because one problem I have with the game is that the grind is just not great, but I will get into my gripes with it shortly. Unfortunately for Wayfinder and the developer being Airship Syndicate is they just cannot catch a break with this one. Everyone wanted Wayfinder to come out really early. They did that despite numerous delays. The August release date came out, was abysmal. People hated it. It's understandable. The game was pretty much unplayable. But now they've just had their publisher, Digital Extremes, drop them. Not necessarily for the reasons you might be thinking. By the looks of things, Digital Extremes seems to be just losing a ton of employees anyway and focusing on more internal projects. You know, Warframe and their new game Soulframe, whenever we see anything like that. But that means that Wayfinder no longer has a publisher, which is an awful, awful position for them to be in, I imagine, which does not fill me with a lot of confidence. Partly because Digital Extremes, albeit have not made amazing choices with Warframe over their decade-long development of the game, but the game went from being a very niche third-person action shooter to one of the most well-known and well-played free-to-play games currently out there. I mean, the game has been around for 10 years and it's still very, very popular. Even I get burnt out on that game all the time. I come back to it every now and again and I sink in another 100 or 200 hours and then I take like a year-long break and I'll come back and it'll happen again. So the formula they found with Warframe is one that I'm very much interested in, and that is part of the reason I was so interested in playing Wayfinder in the first place, which is why I find it a little bit hard at the minute to actually want to play Wayfinder in general. Wayfinder has the same exact issue that Warframe did in its very, very early days. A lot of people won't know how Warframe played in the early days. I'm one of the few crazy people that actually managed to play the game during closed beta when it was like on MMO Bomb, I think it was. You pretty much just typed in your email and you may or may not get lucky with a gift code, and I did, and I managed to get into the Warframe closed beta, and at which point the game sucked my soul out and has absorbed like 1,000 hours of my lifetime over 10 years. But the problem with Warframe then is that it had a good foundation, but there was a lot that needed improving. And over the years, they improved on the parkour, the movement, the gameplay, the combat. They improved on literally everything, and it made it a very good, very, very competent free-to-play game. And I am hopeful enough to think that Wayfinder may be in the same boat, but there is a possibility that may not be the case. But again, we won't know. Obviously, hindsight is something we will not know until after the fact. Hopefully, Wayfinder is one of those games where fundamentally it can be a really good game, but as of right now, it just isn't. The game does still have a lot of issues, that is plain to see. It is in early access, so understandably, those issues are to be expected. They are going to be improved upon, I get that, but as of right now, the game does need a fair amount more to make it a more enjoyable experience. For instance, characters I feel get quite boring fairly quickly. With characters only having 4 abilities to choose from, it's easy to see why the game would get boring after a while. I mean, of course everyone's going to have their favorite character, but even your favorite character is going to get dull after a little while. So I think along the line they do need to implement some new abilities. It would make sense. I know that Warframe didn't used to allow for you to like switch out abilities, and then they brought in the I can't remember the system off the top of my head, but they brought in, is it the Hellion system? I can't remember. And it allows you to switch out some abilities for your Warframes. But obviously I don't want to compare Warframe and Wayfinder just because they had the same publisher. They shared digital extremes at one point, because unfortunately, by the looks of things with Wayfinder, that just isn't the case anymore. And what sucks even more is that apparently I saw a post on their Discord that because they're published by Digital Extremes on PlayStation, only the publisher can update the game. So until new contract is set up or whatever, I don't really know what the process is. Until something is set up, PlayStation players are kind of just stuck on whatever current patch they're on. So if it's a horrifically buggy patch, nothing can be done. You know, that's less on them, that's more on Sony and their weird, I don't know, legal requirements, but I'm not going to get into that because I know nothing about that side of the industry. But Wayfinder is a game I really want to enjoy, but I find myself not putting any real time into it. I don't know if it's because I'm tired of it. I don't know if it's just a bit basic at the minute, but for the most part, the game needs more, and I understand that it's going to get more. It's in early access. It's barely been out 3-4 months at that, and they've just, you know, suffered a major blow with their publisher being stripped away from them. It's probably not an ideal situation for them to be in, but as of right now, I don't think Wayfinder is in a great position. And of course, when the game gets closer to free to play, hopefully there's a lot more content, there's a lot more characters, hopefully the game is a lot more playable. I imagine we're going to run into some horrific server issues again once the free to play player base drops in, because whenever a free to play game drops, everyone wants to check it out to see if it is good, and regardless of whether it is or it isn't, loads of people are going to join day one and the servers are going to be trashed. And it doesn't matter if you're a tiny indie studio or one of the biggest developers in the world, everyone has server issues. It's just the standard. But yeah, I want to like Wayfinder, I really do, but as of right now, it definitely needs just more time in the oven to cook, and that's fine. But if you're someone that's thinking of putting money into Wayfinder right now, I wouldn't exactly recommend it. If you want to see how it is, you know, get the basic package, see how you like it. Obviously, there's always Steam's refund policy. I mean, can't really garner how a game is after a couple of hours, especially one of this size, but you know, it's something you can at least try. If the gameplay, you immediately go, oh, good grief, no, this is a big no for me, then, you know, you got that 2-hour window, but that's up to you. But yeah, as it stands, Wayfinder is in an interesting spot, and I would like to see where it ends up, because Warframe at one time was a game that just wasn't the best. At one time, Warframe was just that game that, you know, had some really cool ideas. They were not executed perfectly well. And then as time went on, they flushed them out, they got better, and things just, you know, went on from there. Again, I understand that Warframe and Wayfinder obviously are not the same game, and, you know, Digital Extremes isn't the developer for Wayfinder, but you have to understand it's easy to sort of compare the two, considering that, you know, they're both, you know, linked to Digital Extremes in one way, one, you know, being the developer for Digital Extremes, or one being Digital Extremes themselves. Maybe it's just naive optimism that Wayfinder will end up how successful Warframe was. Do I see it as a possibility? Who actually knows? At this point in time, probably not. Wayfinder, currently, it's not a game I would easily recommend to many people. It has a lot of work to be done on it, and I hope they keep up the good work, and I would love to see where the game ends up in a year or two, or when it finally releases fully. But as of right now, I wouldn't say it's worth your money, but here's hoping that changes. Maybe one day there'll be an incredible update that just makes everything much more fun, makes the grinding more enjoyable, makes the gameplay loop more satisfying, and all of that good stuff. But we'll have to wait and see how that one pans out. I like the idea of Wayfinder. It's a game I want to spend my time grinding and farming on, but every time I think about doing it, I don't end up doing it. I think of something I'd rather be doing, and that's just not what you want. So yeah. Anyway, I've been James, the Mayor of JamessTown. Thank you for those that stuck around to the end. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. And until next time, goodbye.